Welcome to reality. You're now on the Code of Mind channel. Have you ever had the feeling that we weren't simply placed here, Warren, but confined? As if we don't live on an open planet, but inside a carefully outlined sector. There are permitted routes, approved countries, legalized ways of movement. And there is one place you will never reach on your own: Antarctica. Officially, it's just an icy continent, supposedly empty. Nothing to do there except science, all restrictions explained by the need to protect its unique nature. But then a question appears. Why was a separate international treaty signed specifically around Antarctica in 1959? A treaty that bans military bases, bans nuclear testing, bans resource extraction, and allows access only to a narrow circle of expeditions under strict control. Why can an ordinary person travel almost anywhere, into war zones, conflict regions, oil fields, yet not here? Yes, tourism exists on paper, but it is always extremely expensive, strictly rooted, constantly monitored. Neighboring countries can fight, explode, divide territories, argue over every square kilometer of land, and this is considered normal. But suddenly, a frozen piece of nothing becomes a sacred cow. No wars, no extraction, no independent bases, no unsupervised research. Too much protection for a place no one is supposedly interested in. And against this background, another picture begins to emerge. Antarctica is not just a continent. It looks more like the edge of a quarantine zone, an icy boundary behind which lies something you are not allowed to see. Now add another layer. The year is 1513. Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis creates a world map. In his own notes, he states that he used much older sources, including maps of unknown origin. The map shows Europe, Africa, South America. But at the bottom, there is a detail that is still avoided in polite discussion. A landmass suspiciously resembling the coastline of Antarctica, without an ice cap. The official explanation is simple. It's an elongated South America, or a mythical Terra Australis. But alternative researchers point out something else. The coastline matches too precisely what today lies hidden beneath the ice. Piri Reis explicitly wrote that he worked with ancient maps that could have been created during a time when the climate was different, which means someone once navigated those shores. If we allow this even as a hypothesis, the picture becomes uncomfortable. Today, Antarctica is the edge of the world, a closed zone, a white blank spot. But once, it may have been an ordinary coastline. So what changed? The climate, history, or the rules of the game? Now the 20th century. Richard Byrd is not a myth, not a forum avatar, not a legend recycled online. He is a figure fully acknowledged by official history, a polar explorer, a military officer, a media icon of his time. His name was printed in newspapers. He was decorated. His expeditions were filmed and documented. Antarctica was not the edge of the map for him. It was a mission. And this is where something important begins. When nothing requires not two scientists with tents but an entire fleet. This is no longer romantic exploration. Operation High Jump, 1946-1947. Officially described as large-scale exercises, logistics, cold weather testing, equipment trials, training in extreme conditions. It sounds reasonable. After the war, armies train. But when you look at the structure of the event itself, a sense of dissonance appears. Too many resources, too many ships, too much aviation, too many people. Too serious for an icy wasteland. This was not a casual mission to observe frozen metal. It looked like an operation where comfort was irrelevant, and control was the objective. And after this, something enters the narrative that conspiracy theorists love. Yet it keeps resurfacing with suspicious persistence. Byrd is attributed a phrase. That cinematic one. About a vast land beyond the pole, nearly the size of the United States. It's interpreted in many ways. Some say it was journalistic exaggeration. Some say it was taken out of context. Some say it was mistranslated entirely. All of that could be true. But strange stories have one common trait. They survive not because everyone believes them, but because they fit too perfectly into a gap the official version fails to close. If Antarctica is just ice, why is there so much nervous silence around it? Why, after high jump, do events unfold like a system reacting? Look at the sequence. A major military expedition, rising attention, growing international interest, and almost immediately, movement toward a peaceful scientific zone. In 1959, the Antarctic Treaty appears. The language sounds noble: peace, science, cooperation, prohibitions on military activity. But on an intuitive level, it feels different. First, force enters the zone. Then the boundary is fixed. Then rules are introduced. Then access becomes structured. Then the space turns into a controlled facility. And the most interesting part isn't the bans. Bans can be bypassed, broken, rewritten. What's interesting is something else. Antarctica becomes a place where everything must be authorized, not simply allowed, but allowed only in the way we say. If you are not part of the system of expeditions, agreements, permits, and protocols, you do not get there. Officially, it is not a prison, but in practice, it is a filter. And here the question is no longer about Byrd or his words. The real question is motivation. Why did humanity, which for centuries tore each other apart over coal, oil, and kilometers of land, suddenly become capable of global agreement over a frozen nothing? Why did nothing become the subject of such absolute consensus? You can say ecology, you can say science, you can say security. But something else keeps stirring beneath those explanations. What if Operation High Jump was not just military exercises, but the first contact with a boundary, the place where the familiar map ends? Then the 1959 treaty would not be an act of humanism, but an attempt to fix the perimeter. Officially, we decided to preserve Antarctica for science and peace. But what if the truth is simpler? What if we found the edge of the enclosure and quickly pretended it was just a restricted service zone? Access denied. Now let's put all the pieces together. There is a theory of an infinite Earth where the familiar continents are only one cell. Around them is not just ocean, but an ice ring. Beyond it, other sectors, other lands. Imagine a children's playground inside a vast park. The children are convinced that their square is the whole world. Beyond the fence is nothing. And the caretaker's voice says, "You can't go there." We grew up inside the same logic. Globes, maps, flight routes, everything spins inside a single frame. Beyond Antarctica, emptiness and ice. Any question like, "What's beyond that?" sounds insane. That is exactly how quarantine works. A limited perimeter, controlled exits, restricted information, all justified by the phrase, "for your own safety." If this is a training module for consciousness, then it has boundaries, supervisors, and rules. As long as a person lives in fear, worships authority, and does not ask questions, they remain inside the sector. Welcome to a spiritual kindergarten under a dome. Now look up. Not at the map, not at textbooks. Just look at the sky. The moon. Even official science admits this object is strange. It always shows us the same side. Not sometimes. Not almost always. Always. Synchronous rotation is a beautiful term, but behind it lies an anomaly still explained through assumptions and probabilities. The origin of the moon is not fully understood. There are several hypotheses, and none of them are final. Too many inconsistencies. Too many ifs. And during lunar missions, something else was recorded. Seismometers showed that the moon responds with vibration. It literally rang. Not like solid stone, not like a monolith, but like an object with cavities or unusually dense internal structures. These are not legends. These are recorded data. And here, hypotheses step onto the stage. Not claims, not beliefs, attempts to assemble the anomalies into one model. The moon as an artificial satellite, the moon as a beacon, the moon as an observation node. Individually, each idea sounds extreme. Together, they begin to resonate with a feeling that is hard to ignore. If we imagine Earth not as wild space but as a limited zone, then it must have a control center, not necessarily evil, not necessarily hostile, just functional. The moon fits this role perfectly. It hangs exactly where it needs to be, at the correct distance, with the correct rhythm. It controls tides, which means water, which means bodies. The human body is mostly water, and the rhythms of water are the rhythms of life. Add its influence on sleep, on hormonal cycles, on emotional peaks and drops, and suddenly it becomes clear why the word lunatic once meant a person influenced by the moon. Ancient cultures felt this, even if they could not measure it. Across civilizations, the moon is never just a night lamp, it is cycles, death and rebirth, madness and revelation, the feminine and the dark, as if different cultures without collusion pointed to the same thing. The moon is an active element of the stage, not decoration, not background, part of the mechanism. If we assemble the model completely, it becomes disturbingly simple. Earth is the room. Antarctica is the wall. The moon is the lamp on the ceiling. A lamp that illuminates, regulates rhythms, and possibly observes. And the most elegant part of all this is that you don't even need to believe it. Because control doesn't work through fear, it works through habit. You look at the moon. You photograph it. You make a wish. You like a beautiful night sky. And in that moment, the idea that you are inside a controlled environment never even arises. Because the best dome is the one that looks like romance. If we remove paranoia and stop seeing this as a conspiracy, the picture shifts. Not a prison, but a harsh training regime. Not a place of punishment, but a testing ground. Not a cell, but a simulator. A soul is not thrown here by accident. It is placed into conditions where almost everything works against it. Its memory of who it truly is removed. Not partially, almost completely. It is compressed into a role, name, body, passport, profession, biography. The full scale of a being is squeezed into a tiny sector. It is given a ready-made story. Where you're from, who is right, who is guilty, what to believe, what to fear. This story sounds convincing because everyone around you believes it. And around you is the background. Background characters. People without malicious intent, but with strong gravity. They don't shout, don't wake up. They say something quieter and far more dangerous. Everything is fine. Don't overthink it. It's always been this way. You're thinking too much. That is environmental pressure. And against this background, the main question of the experiment emerges. Will the soul awaken? Not in a mystical sense, not in a religious one. In the simplest and most terrifying way. Will it doubt what it was given as absolute? Will it ask questions that don't earn approval? Who am I beyond my name? Where am I beyond the map? Why do I live this way and not another? Will it stop worshiping external authority? The scientist, and because he knows. The priest, and because it's written. The politician, because there is no alternative. Will it feel the most dangerous realization for any system? That reality responds. That attention is not just a gaze, but a tool. That state is not emotion, but tuning. That choice is not an illusion, but a shift of trajectory. As long as you believe history is sacred and unquestionable, the world map is complete and closed. You are a random set of chemicals flying on a rock through emptiness. You are a perfect participant, not rebelling, not questioning, not searching for an exit. A perfect prisoner who doesn't even know they are inside a system. But then something clicks. You don't adopt a new belief. You don't replace one dogma with another. You simply stop being certain, and that is the most dangerous moment of all. When you begin to doubt not the details, but the foundation, the matrix does not collapse instantly. It cracks, quietly, without special effects. But that crack is enough for light to begin leaking in. I'm not asking you to storm the ice or shoot at the moon. Physical rebellion is the system's favorite script. The real exit begins in the mind. In the moment you honestly admit, I don't know what year we are truly in. I'm not sure history isn't an interface. I see an informational and spiritual quarantine. I don't want to be a background character. You don't have to believe every theory. It's enough to allow the possibility that the borders are not where they were drawn, that the rules are not the ones imposed on you. Quarantine is a test, and that realization alone is enough to crack the dome, because quarantine works only as long as you fear your own questions more than other people's answers. Thank you for being with me on this channel. I wish you the best possible branch of reality. Subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Take care.